You're on CYInterview.
I'm Chris Shandak. Featured columnist Jay Bilstein is with me. Today on CYInterview, we welcome two accomplished women from Hollywood. First, Ruta has been entertaining us since the 1950s with her acting, comedy, and dancing. Her acting career includes roles in the famous films Seven Brides for Seven Brothers and Witness for the Prosecution. She was also the co-host of the game show High Rollers with her dear friend, the late Alex Trebek of Jeopardy fame. Last year, her memoir, Consider Your Ass Kissed, was released. Ruta, thanks for being back with us on CYInterview. How are you?
I am always happy to be with you, and I am exceedingly well, and hope you are too.
Well, we're always glad to have you, Ruta. It's always a truly great pleasure. So, secondly, Liz Vassey has been entertaining us with her acting work since the 1980s. In recent years, she also has become a filmmaker. Her acting resume includes roles on the prominent TV shows CSI and 2.5 Men. In 2019, Liz released an inspiring running documentary called The Human Race, which you can now watch currently on Amazon Prime Video. Liz, thanks for being back with us again on CYInterview. How are you?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I love it.
Oh, we're always glad to have you as well, Liz. So just to begin, Ruta, let's start with you. What are you most proud of in your show business career?
The fact that I've survived this many years and earned a living at it. I mean, I am now 87 years old. And you lie so much in the early part of the business. You know, you always want to be older, and then you want to be younger. But I'm now 87 years old, and I'm still making $1 or $2 in the industry, which is kind of nice. So to have survived all those years and still loved show business and still consider myself in it, even though I'm not leading lady material anymore, and I hate playing little wizened old ladies. I just don't feel like one and don't act like one. I'm still full of piss and vinegar, and I intend to go on being that way until they put me in the ground.
Liz, same thing. What are you most proud of from your show business career?
Well, you know, right now I'm doing a show with Ruta, so I'm very happy about that because I'm a big fan. But aside from that, I would say a couple things. I'm really proud of my role in CSI because I know from letters that it actually inspired young girls to go into science, and I would love to see more young girls in STEM in general. So anything I can do to further that cause makes me extremely happy and extremely proud. I'm very proud of the documentary that I did because I received letters from people saying that they're now getting out and exercising for the first time in their whole lives, and they thought that age should be an impediment to that, and they're learning they can do more than they thought that they could. And also, like Ruta said, I just sold my 8th pilot that I wrote, and I think I'm most proud of myself for rolling with the punches and moving along into different areas of the industry and finding success and happiness, more importantly, where I can. And right now, it's with writing.
Ruta, speaking of the industry of Hollywood, what is your insight on where we are today?
Oh, Lord, I wish we were back in the good old days when supposedly we young girls got chased around the desk by the old fat producer. I never really had that happen. If it did, I didn't recognize it. Let's put it that way. Maybe I was too stupid. I don't know. But I never really had that happen. But I miss the business the way it was. I miss time being taken to do things well. I miss sitting around waiting for a shot to be set up and swapping stories and wonderful giggling lies with my fellow compatriots, you know, the lovely part of the industry that way. I don't like the speed, and I don't like the fact that most, and I can say this as an aged actress, I don't like the fact that casting directors or people responsible for all of that don't do their homework, and I don't like casting calls. I don't like people with their backgrounds better than anybody that was producing the film go in to read for one line or whatever it is. It's so totally unnecessary. I don't know how producers find the time to sit around and watch people with credentials that are far better than their own have to come in and do that kind of nonsense. I just love the wonderful story about darling Shelley Winters when she went in and was interviewed by some guy with holes in his jeans and his legs in sneakers up on the desk saying, well, tell me what you've done, Miss Winters. And she pulled out the Academy Award from her bag and put it on the desk and said, you first, dear. That strikes me as where we were at one time, and I don't like where we are now.
Liz, what are your thoughts on the industry of Hollywood today?
Well, first of all, I love that Shelley Winters story. But to get back to one of the first things that Ruta said, as somebody who has dealt with the sexual harassment in Hollywood and somebody who has a lot of friends who have dealt with it, I am thrilled that we're moving beyond that and we're trying to find parity between men and women. Feminism matters very much to me, and I do think that things are changing in the right direction there. I understand a lot of people never did have to deal with it, but a lot of people have, and so I'm happy that we're trying to get pay parity between men and women, so that is thrilling to me. But the other part of what Ruta was saying, I agree with the biggest thing to me is that I believe, and maybe this is just the most ignorant thing to say, but I believe from my own experience decades ago, it was a bit more of a meritocracy. I believe, I could go in and give a great audition and get the role because I won it in the room. And now, casting people and studios, first of all, I think they're more fueled by fear than they ever have been. And I also feel like instead of looking at talent, sometimes they're looking at the number of Twitter followers and the number of Instagram followers.
Right.
And I actually moved into writing because one of the things that bothered me was I realized that some influencer who'd never done a TV show in her life could beat me out purely because she had 100,000 people following her on Twitter, and that was no longer interesting to me. So I do miss the day when talent was key more than anything else.
Very insightful things from both of you, Jay.
The other thing that I'd like to comment on with Liz is that these days, I was talking about producers seeing people for one line. Now they're seeing people that are sending in homemade auditions. So an actor no longer just has to be an actor. You now have to know how to light yourself, how to photograph yourself, how to do the sound properly, how to have the background behind you right, and then you have to hire somebody to come in and read the lines to you. This is all totally outrageous as far as I'm concerned.
Jake.
I couldn't agree with you more about that. I mean, I understand because of COVID, but I also think it's caused a lot of difficulty with my actor friends. For me personally, and this is a great blessing, but I'm married to a camera operator. So,
lucky girl.
No, for more reasons than one. Trust me, he's just perfection. But he will shoot self tapes with me and actually read with me. But still, you're absolutely right. Figuring out the lighting and it's just a lot of things that actors shouldn't have to be responsible for and shouldn't have to think about. So I think that's causing a lot of problems for my cohorts too.
Jay.
You know, as both of you were speaking, Ruta and Liz, I was thinking why we wanted to pair both of you up, and in listening to you, I think we did a good job because I think we have here two extraordinarily talented people who have brains, wit, a term I'm going to call good eggness, which I'll get into in a minute, beauty, which probably is the least interesting thing to me about people from Hollywood, whether they're men or women, because some people are just blessed with good looks, but looks fade. Brains, I think, last a very long time. Talent, wit, good eggness, I think, lasts until we go in the ground. But you also just reminded me something when you made a comment about your husband, Liz. Both of you are enjoying, Liz, a wonderful marriage, and Ruta, you had a wonderful marriage, and rest in peace, your husband, who passed not all that long ago. What do you account that to, Ruta, in an industry that is notorious for a lack of domestic bliss? What was your secret in terms of a happy marriage and being in the entertainment industry?
I wish I could say I was responsible for it. I'm not. I mean, to some degree I am, in that I have an extraordinarily wild sense of humor. And I think that I married a man that, while he was very placid and very laid back, a great counterpart to my bouncing off the walls, he had great humility, but he also had a wicked sense of humor. And he said something to me, and in fact, I wrote this in the book. As young brides, and Lord knows I wasn't a young bride, Rona Barrett and I always said we were going to wind up in a Del Webb home for the aged, rocking in our chairs, watching the golfers go by and waving and saying, now, did you have an affair with him or did I? You know, that kind of thing. But then we both wound up with getting married within a year of each other. And Webb, as young brides or first-time brides, you know, you get a little punky and sulky if they don't pick up the phone the right way, or don't smile the right way, or the flowers didn't come the right minute, or whatever, you know, as a young person or a young person in a relationship. And, you know, you kind of get weepy and down in the mouth. And Webb said to me, if this, whatever it is it going to be important tomorrow? Is it going to be important at the end of the week, at the end of the month? Are you going to remember it at the end of the year? Well, of course not. And so from then on, I swear to God, we never had a fight for the rest of our 46 years together.
Oh.
And that's, I think, a remarkable thing. We just would look at each other and start to laugh and say, that's it. So I think if you can just laugh off stuff instead of fighting about it. Also, he let me be the leader when it came to social activities. He never argued about, oh, I don't want to go, or I don't like those people, or it's a bore. He would say, okay, where do we have to be, what time, and what do I wear? And that was miraculous to have that in a man, you know. Other things we would certainly discuss, or he would take the lead, but the social stuff he left up to me.
Liz?
First of all, it sounds like I married the yin to my yang, too, so we're kind of a perfect match in that way, too. He often says he feels like he's married to Lucy from I Love Lucy, because I would just say to him, I was like, we're going to make a documentary, and you're going to be my camera person, and we're going to go shoot runners at 14,000 feet in a small place in Colorado, and you're going to come. And P.S., I think we should run a marathon together so we can talk about it. So he will go along with my schemes wholeheartedly, and I love him for that. But one of the things that we've been really careful about, because we end up spending a lot of time apart, because I'm out of town working or he's out of town working, is maintenance. You know, it isn't a particularly sexy or loving word, but it matters. Never once has he ended up at a hotel without flowers from me waiting for him, and vice versa. There's always something. My. Always. And the one time I couldn't get anybody to deliver to a hotel where he was staying, I actually called the person behind the desk and asked, will you draw a flower and slip it under his door so that he has flowers waiting for him. And we've both been consistent about that. That's mattered a lot. And then one thing that sounds sort of similar to what Ruta was saying, I can curse, right? We can curse on this?
Indeed, you may, and okay. please frequently and with a certain level of vehemence. Go ahead.
Well, we have this whole policy where if we start to argue, we have to remind each other that neither one of us is an asshole, and it's sort of the same thing. First of all, just the phrase reminds us to laugh, and second, we also realize that if we are disagreeing about something, we married each other, we love each other. Neither one is going into this disagreement going, you know what I want to do is wreck his day. I want to his day. No, we both have a point of view. And so once you call each other out and say, neither one of us is an asshole, let's just figure out what it is we're both trying to say. And 99% of the time we realize, oh, we're just coming at this from a different point of view, but there's happy middle ground. So, you know, it's a tool that we use, and it sounds very similar. We just remind ourselves that we're both good people, we picked each other, we love each other, and this is not worth it. You know?
Oh, Liz, beautifully lived and beautifully said.
Thank you. Considering how long you were married, that is a huge compliment. We're at 18 years, and we plan on being married for the rest of our lives. We are just crazy about each other.
Oh, how wonderful. God bless you.
Thank you.
You know, for some reason, a poem by Oliver Wendell Holmes, and I don't know how many of our listeners and readers would think of Oliver Wendell Holmes writing poetry, but he did. And I believe he had a poem called A Mother's Secret Hope. And there was a line from it, if I get it right, it went something like, youth fades, love droops, the leaves of friendship fall, a mother's secret hope outlives them all. And I was thinking about the beginning of it, youth fades. And when I started out, I said, of all these wonderful qualities that I mentioned about the two of you, brains and talent and wit and good eggness and beauty. Beauty to me is perhaps the least interesting. I'm not saying it's not nice to look at nice-looking people. It is. But I'll focus on beauty for a moment, and I'll focus on the coin of the realm, or what used to be the coin of the realm to a certain extent in Hollywood, which is physical pulchritude. I'll start with this question. Both of you, you know, I don't think that looks have faded. And I think now, in today's age, everybody's looking for what's your routine, what exercises do you do, what diet do you have, and so forth. I think I know what Ruta's going to say, because you've touched on this before with us, Ruta. But first I'll throw it to you. Ruta, what's your secret when it comes to looking good?
I don't have a secret, and the rest of it is called paint. That's a major thing.
Oh,
you know.
God.
I always carry, when I fly, which I do a lot, I always carry my makeup with me. God forbid the plane goes down and we have to be picked up with newspaper reporters. So there's always makeup, and it gets tougher to apply as you get older because your skin just doesn't want to take it as well. But I do have a thing about, while I've never been a star with a name above the title when it comes to movies, I have been on stage with my name above the title, but I still think that people like to see people sort of put together, not looking like, you know, a housefrau with 10 children and no help, but sort of getting it together a little bit. I get so many beautiful comments from people saying, it is a pleasure to see you always looking nice and always making an effort, you know. And so even if I'm running down to the drugstore for an aspirin, I do kind of at least put on a little lipstick and dark glasses and a big hat to cover my awful hair, and try to make like Marilyn movie star, which I wanted to be when I was a little girl and am still playing the game at being.
Liz?
Well, you know, first of all, I was not considered a pretty child. I couldn't arrest a date in high school. I mean, it wasn't exactly a lovely experience from that sense. Though I just, anytime anybody says that I'm pretty, I take it as a very big compliment, but it was never where I focused anything growing up. I was a musical theater geek. I loved singing. I loved acting, and I always thought, if it calls for a pretty girl in the script, I can fold them. Like, I can just fold them. I can wear enough makeup and do my hair that if they're told to think I'm pretty, they'll think I'm pretty enough. So I thought I was workably pretty. But, you know, the plus side of that is I never put a terrible amount of stock into it. It wasn't how I defined myself. Now I can say, I just had my 50th birthday on August 9th. I feel prettier than I ever have in my entire life, but it's coming from within. I'm in a really happy marriage. I've talked about it on this show before. I love to run. Running is where I find my mental health. It's where I find my peace. I run every morning. I see deer around the Hollywood Reservoir. It's a beautiful way to start my day. I unfortunately lost both parents at a young age. I lost them both at 71, which is way too young, and it caused me to radically change the way that I treated myself because some of the reasons that I lost them were preventable. And I became vegan, and I started to look into nutrition, and I started to look into health and meditation, and I do feel more at peace, and because of that, I feel prettier, whatever that means, prettier than I ever have. But again, I feel like that comes from within more than anything else.
It's interesting, in listening, you said you weren't a pretty child. I was in a and I mean this is not a joke. I look back at pictures of myself when I was a little kid. I was just an absolutely beautiful little boy I'll send you the pictures and you'll be like, wow, this guy is really not lying. I mean, people would stop my mother in stores, and it got tedious. Oh my God. And then they'd say, do you put mascara on his eyebrow? And I'd be like, offended, like, mascara. Even I knew what that was at a young age. But I've got to tell you, I was the most beautiful little child. I took care of myself very well, better than most people. I think Chris could attest to it, and I look like 10 miles of bad road on a good day. So I have no clue what's going on because I started with the right stuff. My father's 90 and a half. He looks 70, and he looks like he could be, oh, gee whiz. You remember the movie Casino Royale?
Sure.
Yeah.
David Niven. My father looks as good as David Niven, except he's 90 and a half. My mother looks perfect. She just celebrated her 85th birthday. My sister looks like science fiction. I was the most beautiful little boy, take care of myself, work out every day, do everything you're supposed to. Not 10 miles of bad road, 20 miles of bad road.
Oh,
but, darling, there are plastic surgeons that can take care of that.
Well, I don't know. We're going to need an awful lot of plastic. Get on the phone with an oil company because they got to send over the materials. But we are going to have a new show. I'm proposing it. Maybe you'll produce it, Liz. Ruta and Liz, the vampires, because you must be, I don't know, you must be drinking someone's blood or doing something. But
I'm too young.
but I will, you know what, you're right, Ruta, we're surrounded by children. At least age-wise. Of course, my behavior puts me below 15, so maybe there are 3 children here. Charles Dickens, I was listening in the beginning when you were talking about where Hollywood is today. Charles Dickens, I believe, at the beginning of the book, A Tale of Two Cities, said something like it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. And it's a line that I continuously think of going through life. And someone the other day I was listening to in a lecture, and they said, the present is better than we think it is. We've gone through some tough times with the pandemic, and I read how hard Hollywood has been hit by the pandemic, by realignments, by streaming services, and all kinds of things changing. Do you think, Ruta, that there is a silver lining here in the cloud that we've had recently, in that in terms of the entertainment industry, perhaps the present is better than we might think it is?
Well, I think that has been all through life, that the present is better, even though the past just feels more familiar and cozier. I am terrified of the industry now, but that's my problem. It's because I am not tuned into all the electronics. The fact that I can even use my telephone is a miracle. I am not happy with texting and doing all of that stuff. I barely know how to use my computer, and I find that the computer process is changed every 20 minutes, and I'm not good at that kind of nonsense of suddenly having to look at my computer screen, which is different than it was last night, and try to figure out what's going on. And I consider myself a fairly intelligent human being, but it's all moving so frigging fast that I barely get used to one thing and it's time for something else. And I'm still wishing to God that we had on and off buttons instead of everything else that we have now. but that's my problem, and that's not the problem of the 3-year-old who's sitting next to me and knows how to do it all.
Liz?
Well, I completely agree that the present is better. I mean, I'm an optimist at heart, and so I do believe that the universe bends towards justice. And I also think that for all the people talking about this terrible time that we're going through, I think it's a little myopic because, yes, it's terrible. So was Vietnam. So was World War II. So, I mean, you go back. There's never been an era in our country without something that defines it that was terribly difficult for everybody involved and everybody on the tertiary level. So, I do think that there are many, many positive things about where we are now. As far as Hollywood specifically, I mean, I can totally hear what Ruta's saying about the technology, and it is moving at a terribly fast pace, and it's very difficult for a lot of people to keep up. And again, it's something like actors didn't used to have to worry about this, about how many followers that we had. So it's the wild, wild west in that respect. For me personally, with the writing, I'm really thrilled where Hollywood is because I had a very quirky, odd upbringing. I have a quirky, odd take on the world, and a lot of the things I think even 10 to 20 years ago that my brain comes up with that I want to pitch, that I want to work on, that I want to write, would have been considered a little bit too strange. And now there's so many outlets, I mean, good Lord, there's streaming services for everything, things I've never even heard of. People will be like, have you watched that new show on Poot? And I'm like, what is Poot? I don't even know half of these channels. But it's nice because there's niche programming, and I'm finding that to really work for me because I can sell things that will appeal to a certain audience, and it's giving me job opportunities. So I'm very happy about that.
I just have to ask you, Liz, I know I said you could curse, but is Poot for real, or were you cursing?
No, I just made that up. It's the first word I thought of. I just think there's some of these names for strangers.
Because you said it, I'm like, I'm supposed to be keeping up with this stuff. Now there's something called Poot. It sounds like something I'd say to someone in the street back in New York City. Hey, listen, get your Poot out of here. I don't know.
There's such a Poot. Yeah, I mean, there's something called Freebie. I'd never heard of Freebie before, and that's apparently a station that you can pitch to. But the benefit of that is it's become a more inclusive atmosphere in that there's a channel for everything, and I'm finding that to be very advantageous for me.
Yeah, I'm finding it to pop up frequently on my credit card when it shows 7 streaming services, and I only watch 3, and I'm like, what are these other 4? When did I sign up for this? Ruta, best Hollywood anecdote or short story that you could share with us?
Anecdote or short story?
I know my favorite. My favorite is your story about in Las Vegas with Liz Taylor and with Marilyn Monroe. That's my favorite story.
I love that. I only met her one time, I'm sorry to say, and yet I just spoke at the 40th memorial celebration at the cemetery here, the Westwood Cemetery where Marilyn is. And I'm always asked about her. And I saw and met her only one time, and that was in Las Vegas when I was in the middle of doing Sergeant 3 with Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis, Peter Lawford, everybody. And it was Dean's birthday, and Frank threw him a birthday party at the Sands Hotel, and he had a huge table for about, 30 or 40 people. I was sitting between Milton Berle and John Wayne. I mean, that's the kind of thing. And sitting across the table from me was Elizabeth Taylor in her total beauty at the time, married to that schmuck Eddie Fisher. Anyway, and there's a reason I refer to him as schmuck, because Debbie Reynolds was my best friend. But Marilyn came in on Frank's arm, and the room gasped because it was as if a spotlight hit her. She had that magic that the Gabors had, that the minute she walked in the room, she took it. And there she was with her platinum hair, with a white fox wrap, with a sparkly white spangled dress on Frank's arm. And she came over to the table, and she took the spotlight away from Elizabeth Taylor, for the rest of the evening. Poor Elizabeth never got it back. And that was beautiful, beautiful Marilyn Monroe, who was not really a beauty if you broke her down piece by piece, but she knew how to somehow pull it together and pretend that movie star thing that I have always loved, and she did it beautifully, and may she forever rest in peace, although she hasn't left us in peace, because we're still clamoring for Marilyn Monroe.
Liz, favorite Hollywood anecdote or short story?
I mean, I can't beat that because I mean, Ruta worked with Billy Wilder, for God's sake. She's going to win this competition win against anybody. She's going to have the best Hollywood stories. I did work with Charlie Sheen on 2.5 Men for a while. I have stories, but I cannot tell them. So, so the best, because I liked him very, very much. But there are stories, and yeah, I'll let him be. But I guess my favorite story doesn't have to do with the glamour of Hollywood, but I just thought it was a fascinating thing to be able to do because of my place in Hollywood. I got to do a ride along with actual CSIs in Las Vegas. And that meant I got to go to crime scenes. I got to swab people for DNA. I got to learn how to take fingerprints. And late one night, we went to a convenience store, and it had been robbed. And basically, just to keep me happy, the CSI let me take fingerprints all over the place. It was just busy work for the actress that was along with him, you know. So I'm taking fingerprints, and I showed him one, and he said, "That is such a great fingerprint. I'm going to put it in the system because that is a perfect fingerprint." So I walked out with a little swagger thinking, okay, I know how to fake take a fingerprint. And he called me 2 weeks later, and that fingerprint that I took solved the crime. I happened to take a fingerprint in a spot that proved that somebody was there who said that he wasn't. And so it was fantastic because I just thought, oh my God, just because of what I'm doing in Hollywood, I actually helped right a wrong. I mean, I Forrest Gumped my way into it. I didn't mean to, but it was still wonderful. And I'll never forget that because I thought only being an actor would I have ever been able to experience something like that, and it was great.
Congratulations!
Get to live a lot of different lives, I imagine, as a performer. Very, very interesting indeed. You know, you mentioned Charlie Sheen, and Ruta mentioned Frank Sinatra. And I would think I don't make them equivalent in any way, shape, or form. However, I would say certainly Charlie Sheen had a reputation as a bad boy. We haven't seemed to hear that much from Charlie Sheen recently. And I would say that 2.5 Men, in some way, I don't know if Chuck Lorre, put that part together specifically for him. I don't know the backstory, but it seemed to celebrate, just like I said, Liz, you and Ruta have good eggness. 2.5 Men seem to hold up bad boyness. Now, Charlie was a modern-day bad boy. I think Frank in his day, with the Rat Pack and so forth, had a reputation for being a bad boy. Ruta, do you think that is something relegated to the annals of Hollywood, that we will not really see a return of bad boys because of the zeitgeist, and which in many, many ways has certainly moved in the right direction, but do you think the age of bad boys is over?
I don't think that the age of bad boys is ever over. I think it was long before any of these guys that we're talking about came along. I think women, young women, older women, etc., are always fascinated by the boy that is a little different, is a little out of the mainstream. All of us have had that feeling from the days of yore, and it's going to come along. The difference for me was that I learned about bad boy Frank Sinatra was that he was, without a doubt, one of the finest and loveliest gentlemen, too, and extremely solicitous of women, and he had that magical thing that doesn't go with bad boy, of being totally enthralled and captivated with whatever woman was with him, whether it was his mother, whether it was his wife, whether it was a girlfriend, whether it was a hooker from down the street. if she was in the room, he stared directly at that woman and not past. Unbelievable piece of magic that should be learned by all men.
Interesting. You broke something down very, very interestingly here. You talked about a quality that doesn't go along with being a bad boy, and you say Frank Sinatra was a gentleman. And I think maybe some of that's lost today in Hollywood lore, or when we look back at some of the icons of the past. Ruta, am I remembering correctly? Did Frank at one point in time court you, or was he chasing after? I seem to remember something like that.
Well, not exactly courting or chasing. I was here and obviously captivated by him. How else could you be anything but? But when it didn't come to pass, he still remained my good friend, and we were friends all the time. He was also very volatile. He was quick to catch fire, and he would get pissed off about things and kind of put people at a distance from him, and then pull them back in again. So I thought he was a difficult man. He would have been a difficult man to be married to, I would assume. But damn, he was good to me, and I will always think of him as kind of my hero.
Liz is the age, in a contemporary take from, your most recent experiences and all?
Well,
is the age of the bad boy over?
To defend Charlie a little bit, to defend 2.5 Men, first of all, I would say 9 times out of 10 the women ended up being right on that show, so it celebrated sort of the buffoonery of being a bad boy sometimes. I think that was one of the things that Chuck tried to do, certainly with my role on it. I got to be right. So it was Charlie making a fool of himself in an attempt to be a bad boy, but ultimately it turned out that he was wrong, and he would realize it, within 3 acts with the laugh track. And Charlie was an absolute professional and gentleman to me. I realize everybody is made of many different parts, and there's dark and light in everybody, but all I can say is the time I spent with him, I saw all the light, and he was lovely. That said, much like Frank Sinatra, I imagine I wouldn't date him, but I thought he was wonderful, and I would work with him again in a hot second. But as far as the bad boy thing, to me, it's not even a bad boy or a bad girl. It's not even gender-based. It's a rebellion. I think we as human beings are really attracted to rebellious souls. There's so much fear in this world, and I think anybody that bucks against that fear becomes sort of a light. Like she was saying about Marilyn Monroe, they become different. They become somebody we kind of want to emulate and live on the wild side. They're doing all these things we're told not to do. They're eating that apple, it started with Adam and Eve. And it just makes us feel like, well, if they're doing it, if they're getting to live that and basically flip off the rules, it's exciting to see somebody like that. And I never conflate that attitude with being a misogynistic son of a bitch, which is completely different. I think somebody can be rebellious and still be kind. So I guess my definition of the whole bad boy, bad girl thing might be slightly different. I've just known very rebellious souls in my life who are also very kind humans.
No, I think it's very well said. The scene I think of you in 2.5 Men was, I believe there was a scene, I think it was in your home, and you're dating Charlie, and your daughter comes in.
Yes.
And yeah, that's the scene that pops to my mind. By the way, I will respect it. You said, I'm not going to talk about Charlie, and I think it makes sense. But do you think there's something to be said that he was in mind specifically for that role, or do you think it was just serendipitous?
Oh, no, I think he was definitely in mind for that role. And I think, I know for a fact he had done Spin City before that, and he was highly dubious about his own ability at comedy. And so, this show, 2.5 Men, was sort of built around him and with him, and it was very charming to me how unsure he was after having the career that he'd had. It was charming that he was still taking the time to do the work and to figure out how to make a scene funny. And he really is a good actor. part of not wanting to talk about all the other stuff is I don't read the tabloids. I don't look at that stuff. You hear things.
Good for
I've
you.
heard things. But I don't look. I tend to try and educate myself to a certain degree from people who have worked with people. I don't like to go in blind, but I also take a lot from the personal experience. And I was never going to date Charlie. I was never going to hang out with him socially, but working with him was absolutely lovely. And like I said, I'd do it again in a second. He couldn't have been a better scene partner. He was so fun.
Ruta, go ahead, Ruta.
I just wanted to say, I think you hit on a word that we don't use enough, and it should be the credo that we all have, every single human being in our lives, and that is the word kind. Mm-hmm. You can dislike, you can hate, you can loathe, you can whatever. Be kind. It is not difficult to be kind.
I agree, and I don't like the word nice. I think nice is a social construct. I think you can act nice. I think you are kind. Mm-hmm. And so I agree.
Yeah, well, what a great segue, because now I'll get to the good eggness. Ruta, both you and Liz, I mean, we've had you on a good number of times, thank God, and thanks to both of you. And both of you just are good people. And what I find so interesting, I remember when we had James Darren on. I don't know if either of you know James Darren. I don't know if Ruta, if you ever work with James. What a nice man. And we've had so many people from, I think I can think of one Hollywood person one time where I'd walk away and said, if I never speak to this person again, whatever. But the people that we've had the experience here at CYInterview with, who are in the entertainment industry, whether they're musicians, whether they're singers, whether they're actors, whoever they are, have just virtually to a person, 99% really been good, wonderful people. And I wonder where what pops into the common mind of something a little bit less than a good egg, less than a wonderful person pops up. Do you think that's jealousy? Is there a disconnect between what we think of our entertainers and who they are, and perhaps why the public doesn't embrace actors and entertainers perhaps as they should be embraced, for they truly are? Is there something missing there, Ruta?
Well, you put your finger on it. I think when it comes to the general public, and of course the general public is our money and our future and our everything. The general public either like you or they don't like you. It's up to you to figure out what they're going to like or not like about you. But I am very, very thrilled with the people in our business. And some of us are little shits, let's face it, but most of us are damn good people.
I agree.
And what really sort of solidifies it for me in my mind, because I've been, for the last 60 or 70 years of my life, I've been in the fundraising business, as you know, with the Thalians. Debbie Reynolds and I were the mother superiors of the Thalians, and that was Hollywood for mental health. And we went from pediatric to geriatric care, and now we've put our focus on the mental health of our returning veterans through Operation Mend at UCLA. They heal the broken and fractured bodies of our returning vets. We Thalians try to heal the broken and fractured mind and spirit of our returning veterans. But our show business community, which is vast, always gives away the only thing they have to sell, which is their time and their talent. At every benefit, anywhere in the world, there will be somebody in show business giving their time and talent. At least it used to be. Now I'm hearing, and this is the part that breaks my heart, and maybe it's, if you can get to the star themselves on a one-to-one, you'll get a yes or a no, and that'll be that. If it's through that phalanx of management. There has to be, well, they'll come, but they'll have to fly in a private plane that you'll have to hire, that will have to bring the entire band because they do, and the manager, and there will be 12 people at the dinner accompanying it. Oh, and you'll have to, of course, house everybody in the hotel, and and then and there will be a Rolex at the end. That's kind of a generalization of what I'm getting now. Whereas when I called Frank Sinatra or Dean Martin or Sammy Davis or Lucille Ball, it was, yeah, damn it, I don't want to, but I'll be there. Okay, count on me. And not only would they be there, but if it was Frank Sinatra, he'd pick up the tab for the orchestra. I think that I admire those of us who are willing to give our time and our energy, and often when you're not feeling well or it's your only free time and you've got to give up your Saturday or your Sunday, God bless those people that will do it and who help by their presence to fill the seats with patrons and the coffers with money for a charitable cause that will help those who cannot help themselves.
Liz?
Well, Ruta, I just love you. I love everything you just said. I love what you're doing. Thank you for what you're doing. I hope that the people you reach out to and get demands like that, and this might be naive of me, I hope some of it is the gatekeepers and not the actual people. I hope.
It usually is. Mm-hmm.
I hope, yeah. For me, personally, I've been so incredibly fortunate. I would say about 99% of the time, everything that I've worked on, I've loved people. I was raised first and foremost to be grateful for everything that I've had. I've had a very blessed life, and I'm very aware of that, and I'm grateful every day. I've worked with a lot of people who are grateful every day. I think sometimes there are some people in entertainment who look so deeply at what they don't have, thinking that it's going to bring them some kind of happiness, which, first of all, it's not. If you're not happy with yourself, it doesn't matter if you star in the next big movie. Like, it's not going to make you happy. You have to find that all by yourself. But I also think that I remember a friend of mine years ago had said to me, I had just done, I think, 5 different series in a row. And I remember he looked at me and he said, yeah, but why aren't you Julia Roberts? Meaning, why are you not starring in the biggest movies? And I said, I just got off of 5 series in a row. And I said, and furthermore, it's not the way I look at life. Why didn't the piano fall in my head a week ago? If you're going to look at the one side, you have to look at the other. How fortunate have I been? And I've always had a very strong take like that. And I think most of the people that I gravitate toward and most of the people I work with do too. We're all just grateful to be where we are. It's blessed air. It's very rarefied air.
And again, just so many wonderful, wonderful people in the entertainment business, giving people, and also people who bring us a tremendous amount of joy, especially in tough times. And I think sometimes we in the general public forget that. Ruta, as you were speaking about people, giving of themselves, and I think back to the old days, and then I was thinking about your comments on Marilyn Monroe. I remember back in the 60s, Bob Hope used to go off, well, Bob Hope for years was doing this kind of thing, but in the 60s he would go off to Vietnam. And he would go with the USO and entertain the troops. And I remember one year, I don't remember if it was in 1968, a young Joey Heatherton went with him. And I don't know how much either of you are familiar with Joey Heatherton's career, but she was a phenomenal dancer, among other things. But she had that incandescent thing going on. And there she was in her 20s, and I doubt she got any kind of special treatment, and she went off with Bob Hope to Vietnam right in the heart of danger and entertained the troops. And, I wonder, in you having said that, Ruta, if that would be true today, if a 23-year-old person at the top at the apex would now go and do the same thing. I couldn't possibly answer that, but you made me think of Joey Heatherton.
That's a very interesting thought. Go ahead, Liz.
Oh, I believe they would. I mean, I hear about, depending on the person, but I've heard of so many stars giving millions of dollars when there's a hurricane, when there's a natural disaster, giving money, giving time. You look at Harry Connick Jr. going to New Orleans to help rebuild it. I realize he's not.
Well, Sandra Bullock in 9/11, and which is tomorrow, and Sandra Bullock also, I believe, when there was the tsunami in Asia, and I think each time she just wrote $1 million check, just like that.
Yep. Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively. I mean, there you go. They're very young, and I think that they are out there. I can't speak for everybody, but I've certainly seen people giving their time and their resources and their funds, and I think it's the right thing to do, and I think it's beautiful.
Liz, anything you want to ask Ruta? Ruta, anything you want to ask Liz?
Oh, I do. I want to ask her something. What was it like working with Billy Wilder?
Oh, wow. Billy Wilder, to me, was a walking god, you know. It was an amazing experience. And, again, what I love about my husband and what I love about anybody that I meet in life is a wild sense of humor. And Billy Wilder not only was the funniest person, he wrote the funniest material. He directed in a rather humorous, wonderful way. And, you know, I mean, I remember one day when he literally would put the rhythm in what he wanted in Marlene Dietrich's line. You know, he would say, Marlena, I want you to go va-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, va-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I thought he was kidding, but he actually wasn't. He was getting a performance from her with what he was doing. And he would say to her, if you don't do it like that, I'm going to have you turned into a lampshade. And so that's the kind of craziness he had, and I just adored him, absolutely adored him.
I love that. I love The Apartment so much. I could watch it anytime. I'm a Billy Wilder fan, so I saw that when I looked you up and saw that you worked with him. It was the first thing I wanted to ask you.
Well, and he spoke like half my family, because half my family came from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And
yes,
they spoke like,
yes.
And my father actually is born in Germany, so they spoke like that. My father doesn't. You never know he's born there, but I do remember that.
That's funny.
Well, I had to play German accents quite often, and so whether it was on Hogan's Heroes or whether it was on Operation Eichmann or whatever, and I loved doing Hogan's Heroes because I think I did it like 4 or 5 times, and each time I did a different accent. One was British, one was French, one was Russian, one was German.
Well, actually, Ruta, that's my earliest recollections of you, because as a kid, I was a Hogan. That was my favorite television program.
And you know what I have to say to you? Oh, shut up. You were a kid. Oh.
Well, you were a kid too. We were both kids.
I was, yes.
Yeah, but that's where I first came to know of you, and what a show that was. I don't even know if a show like that could exist anymore. I want to see that's a thing.
We're so politically freaking correct. I'm so sick of it.
I'll close with that. Liz, could you have a show like Hogan's Heroes? Can we laugh? I don't even know how to say this without canceling myself. I mean, one of my favorite comedians, Don Rickles, I mean, he made fun of everybody all the time, but he was a good, nice man, and everybody knew it was a joke, and he made fun of your kind and his kind and everybody else's kind. Can that exist anymore, and are we missing something by not having that steam valve where some of that blows off in humor instead of ends up in polarization? Any take on that, Liz?
I have thought about this because I thought this might come up, and I don't know how popular my answer is going to be, but this is my truth. I believe that and this is not about Don Rickles specifically, and I think roasting people and being funny to a person, particularly if you're punching up, if you're making fun of Brad Pitt can take it. If they're jokes about marginalized communities, this is where it starts to really bother me. And I think that perhaps things that we found funny. I watched a movie from, I think, 72 the other night, and it was using a lot of slurs against gay people. I love my gay people. I love the LGBTQ plus community. I cringed. I heard the way that they were being talked about, and it was supposed to be quote-unquote funny. I guarantee you, for the number of people that were laughing at it then, people were cringing then too, who were in the LGBTQ plus community. They just didn't have any sort of platform to speak about it. So I feel like, while I understand that people are feeling like comedy is curtailed, and I understand that there's a lot of room for satire, and I understand that the pendulum has swung very far in the other direction, again, I believe that the universe bends towards justice, and I would rather live in a society where for a while, God forbid, people can't be funny the way they want to be funny, but people in different marginalized groups who have felt other and felt rejected and felt at risk are being taken seriously. I think that we will find middle ground, but for right now, if you're giving me a choice between hearing some of these quote-unquote jokes about gay people or other communities, or keeping these communities happy and safe, I'm going to pick happy and safe every time.
Well, I certainly agree with you about happy and safe, and you did say about punching up. I would say, Ruta, that in the case of Don Rickles, his humor was always punching up. I mean, who was his number one target for a long time? It was Frank Sinatra.
Frank Sinatra.
Oh, sure.
Like that, I completely agree with that. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Ruta.
No, I was going to say, I know where you're coming from when you're talking about the gay community. Lord knows, I've grown up in the business, therefore I haven't seen, there was no separation, you know, to me, everybody was the same. But I'm thinking, gay people have been around since before Christ, for God's sake. Mm-hmm. How the hell did the Romans and the Greeks and everybody else carry on about it? Did they make jokes? Was it part of the daily routine? It was certainly part of life. I would love to know, you know, how the Romans dealt with comedy and how gay people were looked at in that time frame.
It's fascinating. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You ask a very good question. We could, you know what, this alone, we could go on another few hours and bring in some great academics, because it's actually, that's one of the more insightful things I've heard. How has this been looked at through the ages in terms of through the lens of comedy? I mean, look, I can tell you from my background, my father is a Holocaust survivor. I'm the first person in my family not to live on a farm/ranch in Bavaria that was in the family for 400 years. I laugh about jokes dealing with my people, Jewish people. Yeah. I don't feel it being punched down to, and contrary to popular belief, there are many Jewish people in very tough circumstances. Everybody who's Jewish doesn't have money. Everybody who's Jewish isn't in a position of power. Those are old stereotypes. Many, many people in Jewish communities suffer. But I think one thing that we embrace is the ability to laugh at ourselves, and even laugh when being made fun of by somebody outside of our group. And so for myself, I can say I have no difficulty with that. I was very badly bullied as a kid for 5 years, and I can laugh about that too. I remember Reader's Digest years ago had I think it was a section or something called "Laughter is the Best Medicine." I believe that. You know what, I'm of two minds here, Liz. I'm with you on every single thing you said. At the same time, I think we need to learn to laugh a little bit about ourselves again a little bit more.
I believe that when we get to a society where people are treated more equally and where people aren't being subjected to laws and rules and things that are making them feel less than, I believe once our society, and I hope it happens, where people are treated equally, and rights are given across the board, I believe that could be possible. But I see a wild disparity in how people are treated, and I'm saying this in California, for God's sake, but I see a wild disparity when I go back to certain states, when I visit certain places, and I see a lot more racism, xenophobia, homophobia, then I would like to. So, you know, again, if something's got to fall, I'd rather it be funny than the people. But that's that is me.
I think your point is well taken, and I think, Ruta, your points are well taken, and I think this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. I think we should do it tomorrow. I am not bringing the dip. I don't know, Liz, if you'll toss some onion soup into sour cream. I don't eat sour cream, but you can bring it. And
What kind of
Ruta,
fish you will use that you don't eat sour cream? What's the matter with you?
Ruta, I'm going to leave it to you to bring the libation.
Absolutely. I bring the wine.
Chris?
So for Hollywood legend and actress Ruta Lee, actress and filmmaker Liz Vassey, featured columnist Jay Bilstein, and CYInterview, I'm Chris Janik. I'm going to stop the recording.